Arith. I am quite enjoying this practice of doing comics I like. This is Alan Watson and his Affinity Gars, the gathering of the Gars. We have from left to right Warwick Davis, Moondragon, Gonorrhea, and Dax the Destructoid. This is issue 2, but it's really more of an issue 1. The actual issue 1 of this series was an Alan Watson solo story. All it does is set him up as a character. It's an Affinity Gauntlets epilogue. If it were today, that one would be released as Affinity Gauntlets Aftermath, Alan Watson, Special, One Shot, Issue 1. I'll review that one day. This is by Jim Starman and Angel from Buffy. The artist is the character from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, David Boreanaz. Our story starts in space. Some call it the final frontier. We have a spaceship, and upon that spaceship is a beautiful bald lady named Moondragon. She is waiting to die. Moondragon, she had a run-in with some space scallywags, and she came out of it worse for wear. Her ship has been destroyed, and she is sat counting down the seconds until she runs out of oxygen. What's great about this, what is fucking wonderful about this, is that it unintentionally ties in bloody fantastically with her most recent appearances. Before this, she was a supporting character in Kazar's series, Marky Mark G's Kazar. She was a supporting character in most of the first few years of that. She was a secondary love interest for the title star. She wanted to become Kazar's consort, whether he wanted her or not. That story never quite came to a conclusion because she was taken from Marky Mark to star in this book instead. One of the last times we saw her in Kazar rejected her and scolded her for using her powers the way she does. And there is this one scene where it gets to the heart of Moondragon's many problems, really. She has always been rejected in the end. She is considering killing herself, walking off the edge of a building, but she decides not to. It was just a fleeting fancy for her. It was a moment of weakness that she quickly recovered from. Then we have this scene, and it works terrifically if you keep that suicidal bit in mind. There is absolutely no reference or allusion to it. Jim Starman didn't much care for Marky Mark J's Kazar, but this works so wonderfully with it. Moondragon, having been rejected another time by Kazar since that vulnerable moment, she went off into space with the intention of encountering a hostile alien ship and dying in a pointless confrontation. Now she's facing the realness of the situation. She's not going out in a blaze of glory. She's not majestically exploding into a big ball of fire. She sat there waiting for her oxygen supply to run out. That is when Alan Watson appears. He is currently in possession of the Affinity Gauntlet. He is in essence the supreme being in the universe, and he is assembling people for a cause. This opening scene is really good. Scripting is brilliant. Moondragon, her character is written in a humble and vulnerable way where she is easier to go with and less hateable than some of the other depictions of her. We also have a special appearance by Alf. Remember Alf? He's back in Pog form. Jim Starman had a bit of a fixation on Alf in the early 90s. Alf would always be in his comics in the background, usually on TV screens. I could almost recommend his entire body of work, starting with Silver Surfer 34. Just go through it and try to find all the Alf cameos. Our next recruit is Dax. Most of these characters, all of them but Moondragon actually, had only recently been in Jim Starman's Affinity Gauntlets, and before that, Silver Surfer. The team makes sense. The team makes utter sense. I am of the mind that this team, this grouping of characters, is superlative. They work so well together. They are a perfect cast. This page, however, also flashes something in our faces that I have long thought, and it is the only time in the series I will get to see it. Shade, the changing man, who is with Dax here, he should be a member of the Affinity Guard. No, wait, hear me out, guys. Stop throwing those tomatoes. Not only does he fit the criteria of being a Jim Starman character like the other five, but I think he would fill a much needed role on this team. We lack a conscience, we lack a constant motivator. Alan Watson has a lot piled on his back in this series. He's basically the impetus and the focal figure. They all gather around and do what he says. Shade, the changing man, would have provided a great counter to it all being Alan Watson. I'm not a lover of Shade, the changing man. He was decent in Avengers, or at least towards the end of his stint. I liked him when they were battling Terminal in the sewage land, and then when they went into space. He had come into his own by then. But his character is that he is an adventurer. He is looking for adventure. So if he was on this team, when something comes up, it wouldn't just be Alan Watson assessing whether it is worth he and the others getting involved. Now it would be Shade, the changing man, wanting to get involved because it is an adventure, and also because, down to his time in Avengers, he has a greater sense of altruism than the others. As the series goes on, Gonorrhea ends up adopting a lot of that. She becomes a de facto second leader. She carries a lot of the motivation and plot necessity. Because even though they tried here, you can't have a team that is based entirely around one character. The next thing on the docket to talk about is our art by Angel. I know I did talk about his art somewhere else. Can't remember where. It is an acquired taste at best. A lot of the time it is Avengers. It was an Avengers fill-in, taking AIM, the Red Skull Man one. That is when I talked about it. Anyway, His art is dreadful in some comics, but the best it has ever looked is in the Affinity Guard issues where he has had time to work on it. This issue, his art in this issue is great. The thing is, he never does more than 2 consecutive issues on this series. We get fill-ins straight away, and eventually the fill-in art is Tom Grindberger's. The art is not a strong component of Alan Watson and his Affinity Guard. When we finally lock down a good one, Jim Starman is on his way out the door. Although that's unfair, I do think I like Angel's art in this issue, and a few of the other ones he does. Not issue 25, that is a mess. That is bad Angel art. Well, this is him on form. Now, having brought these characters together, we are faced with one of the little dramas we have in play. Dax, he was reborn in Silver Surfman a year or 2 earlier, but this time he was resurrected in a new body, a much, much bigger body, but with limited intelligence, due in part to the nature of his death. In the classic Thor Gets Raped story, a true classic if ever there was one, Dax was killed by his daughter, Moondragon. He was trying to fight against Moondragon's mental control, and Moondragon caused him to die from an aneurysm. She caused him to die from brain damage. So now the two are reunited on this team, and Moondragon is terrified of Dax, but Dax has no memory of how he died, or what happened, or even who Moondragon is to him. This is a great, tense, boiling pot undercurrent throughout the series. The idea that Dax might remember one day, and Moondragon will finally have to pay for her sins. We get to our main premise now. Alan Watson, he has come to the conclusion that supremacy doesn't fit him, and so he is going to relinquish his power. Rather than leave it up for grabs for someone like Thanius, he is going to dole out the affinity gems to appropriate protectors, e.g., these allies he has gathered together now. First, Warwick Davis gets the space gem, allowing him instantaneous teleportation to anywhere he can think of. As Moondragon points out, there is a lot more application that can be done with the gem, but Warwick Davis isn't smart or enlightened enough to realise any further uses. Alan Watson then gives the mind gem to Moondragon. She already had some mastery of the mind. Now, her powers are expanded dramatically with the gem. However, she has to use it responsibly. That is one of the few rules Alan Watson demands. So we won't be treated to another great scene of her stealing Thor's ability to consent. And back before giving up the power, Alan Watson shielded himself and protected himself from the mind gem being used against him. He gives Dax the power gem, and Dax then mistakes it for a jelly bean, and he eats it. There is a lot of comedy in this, by the by. Dax is comic relief. Warwick Davis is comic relief. Alan Watson is the straight man. Gonorrhea and Moondragon are the ones who are often put out or irritated by all the shenanigans. Another reason I would argue Shade the Changing Man could have balanced the team better. Then we have Gonorrhea. she gets the time gem, because we have ran out of gems that can be appropriately given to a corresponding character. There wasn't a murder gem, there wasn't an assassin gem, there wasn't a green-skinned woman gem, so she has to settle for the time gem. Meanwhile, Alan Watson will continue to possess his soul gem. He and the soul gem have a long history, all the way back to when he first received it from the Eye Digivolutionary in the Bronze Age. We never did find out how the Eye Digivolutionary came upon the soul gem. So that is 5 of our gems accounted for. But where is the 6th one? Where is the reality gem? This was one of the mysteries we had when the series began. Who the secret 6th member of the team was. Who had the reality gem? They even made a trading card for it. Over here, Warwick Davis suggests Doctor Strange has it. Some other theories people had were Silver Surfman or Thor. I don't mind spoiling this because most people know, and the reveal itself is like a non-reveal. There is no build-up or dramatic revelation. You're just reading a comic and then the character shows up and casually mentions in the middle of a scene, he is the protector of the gem. It's spoilers. Click away now if you don't want 1993 ruined for you. The person with the gem is, unsurprisingly, Thanius. We find out in the middle of Affinity Cluedo. We get a great shot of the team here from Angel. This is what I mean when I say his art can work. There is some stylistic drawbacks to Angel's art, which is often where people don't like it. When you pop him down on Hulk in between issues by Mike Diddy-Dardo Jerk, it looks bad, it looks too different. But in his own corner, where he can interpret characters with his style, it works a lot. This Splash Rage might be the best piece of art he ever did. The style is there, but it's downplayed a bit even. I think Angel was too slow an artist to deliver this standard consistently. But if he had been, maybe some of his detractors would have never adopted their anti-Angel stances. But yeah, he has put out some shocking art, some very bad art on other books. And even on this one, issue 25 it's bad, it's really, really wretched art and that. Doesn't even look finished. Our team have now been brought together, but they are going their separate ways. Alan Watson, he doesn't really care to be around them. Warwick Davis wants to get up to mischief with his gem. And then Moondragon, she just wants to get as far away from Dax as she can. They're not a team yet. For the first few issues, they will be a non-team, but they will eventually get at headquarters and become an actual team. And they were a great one that Marvel should have kept together. Even without their own title, or without the Affinity Gems set up, it is a group of characters that makes so much sense. And it's not the case they are too obscure, they really get a push with this series. They feature prominently in both Affinity Wars and Affinity Cluedo. There's also the Blood and Thunder crossover. Silver Surfman, Resurrection. People know the team. They know the characters. The characters work well together. It is an appropriate team, but after the series finished, they were done as a team. Marvel brought the name back recently for a team of unrelated, rubbish new characters that nobody cares about. Over here, we have an advert for Operation Galaxy Quest. Art by Tom Planner. This was also painted as a poster, or this is based on that painting by Tom Planner. I don't know which version came first. Great story though. Again, we have a comic that I recommend. I think this was a solid team book. And at a time when a lot of the Marvel line was starting to become quite uninspired or lazy, this one stood out as one of the more exciting ones. The writing of the series is great. The art is inconsistent, but we have great characters and great writing, and that can help you overlook even the awful art in some other issues. God, I really don't understand why this wasn't a team that existed forever. It's perfect. They don't need a book to be a team. They could just show up in other books. The decision to break them up at the end, wasteful. Really, really wasteful. I award issue 2 a 7 thumbs up.